डिअर स्टुडंट्स, या व्हिडिओ लेक्चरमध्ये आपण इयत्ता 11वी इंग्रजीमधील सर्व कवितांचे पोएटिक अप्रिशिएशन अभ्यासणार आहोत. परीक्षेमध्ये 4 गुणांसाठी एखाद्या कवितेचे अप्रिशिएशन लिहा असा प्रश्न विचारला जातो. तुमच्या टेक्स्टबुकमध्ये एकूण 6 कविता आहेत. त्यांची यादी पहा. चेरी ट्री रिटन बाय रस्किन बॉन्ड, द सोअर व्हिक्टर ह्युगो, देर इज अनदर स्काय एमिली डिकिन्सन, अपॉन वेस्टमिन्स्टर ब्रिज विलियम वर्ड्सवर्थ, नोज व्हर्सेस आईज विलियम कॉपर, द प्लॅनर्स बोई चेंग. या एकूण 6 कवितेपैकी तुम्हाला एखाद्या कवितेमधील 10 ते 15 लाईन्स दिलेल्या असतात. त्या वाचून तुम्हाला या प्रश्नाचे उत्तर लिहावे लागते. एक नमुना प्रश्न पहा. राईट ॲन अप्रिशिएशन ऑफ द गिवन एक्स्ट्रॅक्ट कन्सिडरिंग द फॉलोइंग पॉईंट्स अबाउट द पोएम अँड पोएट. थीम, language style or poetic devices, message or morals, your opinion about the poem. अशा प्रकारचे 4 ते 5 पॉईंट्स दिलेले असतात. तुम्हाला परीक्षेमध्ये जरी पॉईंट्स दिलेले नसतील तरीसुद्धा तुम्ही याच पॉईंट्सच्या आधारे उत्तर लिहू शकता. आता आपण प्रत्येक कवितेचे अप्रिशिएशन पाहूया. सर्वप्रथम चेरी ट्री रिटन बाय रस्किन बॉन्ड. अबाउट द पोएम, पोएट अँड टायटल. द पोएम Cherry Tree is written by a well-known poet Ruskin Bond. He wrote many stories and poems. Cherry Tree is a poem of struggle against adversity. The poet motivates us to fight against the adverse conditions in life. The poet observes the growth of the cherry tree at his door and admires it. This is a narrative poem. It describes how the cherry tree came into existence. The title of the poem indicates the central idea of the poem. Theme of the poem. The poem Cherry Tree is about the poet's ecstasy over a tree which has planted 8 years ago. The poet describes how the cherry plant becomes a tree. He also describes the blossoms of cherry and grown-up tree which gave immense joy to the poet. पुढचा पॉईंट पहा. The language and poetic devices. Cherry Tree is a narrative poem. The poet narrates the growth of the cherry tree. There are many run-on lines. Run-on lines म्हणजे at the end of the line the sentence does not end. The poet has used very simple language in this poem. The poet has used alliteration, antithesis, personification, climax, such devices to make the poem more decorative. Special feature. The entire poem Cherry Tree is a simple story in a poetic form. The poet narrates the story of cherry tree and the feeling of ecstasy. This is also a nature poem. Message and morals in the poem. The poem teaches us a lot of things to the readers. The poem gives the message of struggle to achieve a goal. There is also a message of life and hope. The poem motivates the readers to plant trees and to protect the environment. We learn to love trees by learning this poem. आणि शेवटचा पॉईंट, my opinion about the poem. I enjoyed this poem because the tree is personified in this poem. Really, trees are our friends and relatives. We should take care of trees like children. The poem gives the message of the protection of environment. By learning this poem, I learned to admire nature and to love all living beings. अशा प्रकारे आपण या 6 पॉईंट्सच्या आधारे अप्रिशिएशन लिहू शकतो. यानंतर पुढची पोएम आहे पहा. द सोअर रिटन बाय व्हिक्टर ह्युगो. आता या कवितेविषयी आपण माहिती पाहूया. सर्वप्रथम अबाउट द पोएम अँड पोएट. The Sower is a poem written by Victor Hugo in French language. Toru Datta translated this poem into English. The poem is about a sower who is sowing seeds in his fields. The sower is a poor old man who has seen many bad harvests in his life. Every year he is optimistic of having a good harvest. The title of the poem indicates the central character of the poem. Theme. The toiling life of a farmer is the major theme of this poem. The poet describes his feelings for the farmer who is an old man. Though The farmer has seen many bad harvests in his life. He is optimistic of having a good harvest. Poetic devices and language style. The poet used alliteration, inversion, and imagery to make the description more vivid. There are rhyming words in this poem. The rhyme scheme used in this poem is AB, AB. Special features. The poet has the feeling of gratitude for the farmers. So, throughout the poem, we see the poet's reverence for the farmer. The poet gives the emphasis on the hard work done by the farmer. The farmer works in the fields for day and night. The poet has also used word imagery to describe the evening time. He created a huge image of the sower. The poet used picturesque language in this poem. Values or message. The poem gives a very important message to society. Farmers and farm laborers are neglected in the world. We should not recognize the value of their hard work. We should be thankful to farmers. We must do something to improve the lives of our Indian farmers. My opinion about the poem. The poem, The Sower, has created a positive and respectful picture of the farmer in my mind. The poem taught me the importance of simple life and optimistic attitude. I have great respect for the sower who sows seeds for us. Really, I enjoyed the poem and understood its theme. यानंतर तिसरी पोएम आहे पहा, देअर इज अनदर स्काय, रिटन बाय एमिली डिकिन्सन. दिस इज अ फिलॉसॉफिकल पोएम. जीवनाचं तत्त्वज्ञान सांगणारी ही एक सुंदर कविता आहे. अबाउट दिस पोएम अँड पोएट. There is Another Sky is a motivational poem written by an American poet, Emily Dickinson. She often used slant rhymes in her poems. Her poems are songs of life. This poem is a sonnet. It gives the message of never say die. The poem is addressed to her younger brother. The title of the poem indicates a better place to live and enjoy life. Theme. The poet's brother Austin lives in dejected mood. He lives a sorrowful life away from home. The poet inspires her brother not to get depressed under any circumstances and requests him to return home. The poem gives us an optimistic message. Language style and poetic style. The poem is an example of a Petrarchan sonnet. The poet has used slant rhymes, म्हणजेच imperfect rhymes. The language used in this poem is very simple. Poetic devices like hyperbole, alliteration, inversions, and onomatopoeia make the poem more attractive. A lot of symbolic words are used in this poem. This is also a symbolic poem. Special feature. The poem has deeper meaning. The poet speaks about the two aspects of life. The idea of faded forests stands for sad and gloomy aspect of life. Brighter garden represents fresh and energetic life. Message or values. The poem motivates the readers to face the challenges of life. We must tackle the challenges with a positive attitude. The poem teaches us the philosophy of life. We have to accept ups and downs, success and failure, joys and sorrows as part of life. In this way, the poem gives a valuable, optimistic message to all readers. Last point, my opinion about the poem. I like the idea of another sky. I think another sky is a symbol of optimistic life. The poem is a song of life. Really, it teaches the philosophy of life. यानंतर चौथी कविता आहे अपॉन वेस्टमिस्टर ब्रिज, रिटन बाय विलियम वर्ड्सवर्थ. About this poem. About the poem, poet and title. Upon Westminster Bridge is a romantic poem written by William Wordsworth. The poem reveals the poet's love for nature. He also appreciates the beauty of city London. The title shows a specific place where the poem is composed. Theme of the poem. Though the poet William Wordsworth is a nature poet, Here he describes London city without the noise of human activities. The poet describes the clean and smokeless air. He also speaks about the Thames flowing leisurely. The poet is fascinated by the view from the Westminster Bridge. Language style or poetic devices. The poem is a Petrarchan sonnet. The rhyme scheme of the octave is ABBA, ABBA, and the rhyme scheme of the sestet is CDC, DCD. The poet uses personification to describe the sun, the city London, and the river Thames. There are also some examples of personification in this poem. These devices make the poem more decorative. Special features. Usually, the poems written by William Wordsworth describe the beauty of nature. Upon Westminster Bridge is an exception to this. In this poem, the poet describes the beauty of man-made structures like ships, towers, domes, theaters, temples, etc. Message or morals in the poem. The poet watches a view from the Westminster Bridge. We may think that this is an ordinary thing. The poet looks at the view in a positive way and finds supreme beauty in it. The poem teaches us how to appreciate ordinary things. We may find beauty in everything. Now in this way, we will write about morals and values. Last point, my opinion about the poem. The poem is written in simple words. It gives a great message of finding beauty in ordinary things. No doubt, there should be beauty in the eye of the beholder. Nature is beautiful. Nature is great. We must appreciate beauty of nature. In this way, we may write information about this poem, Upon Westminster Bridge, written by William Wordsworth. Now, poem number 5th, Nose versus Eyes, written by William Cowper. या कवितेविषयी पहा. Point number 1, about the poem, poet and title. The poem Nose versus Eyes is a satire on the judiciary system. The poet William Cowper is known for his satirical works. The poet criticizes the legal system in a humorous way. The title of the poem is perfect. It reveals the clash between nose and eyes. Theme. The sensory organs, nose, eyes, tongue and ear, are personified in this poem. There is a dispute between the nose and the eyes regarding the ownership of the spectacles. Nose and eyes represent human behavior in society, which is greedy. According to the poet, justice is given without empathy and common sense. The poet criticizes the legal system in a humorous way. Language style. There are 8 stanzas in this poem. Each stanza contains 4 lines. The first line rhymes to the third and the second line rhymes to the fourth. Different sensory organs are personified in this poem. The poet has used many words related to legal system. Special features. The poem is written in a dialogue form. Here we see the arguments by the tongue as a lawyer. The arguments are perfect and the verdict is given without empathy and common sense. Usually, people do not criticize the legal system, but the poet dares to do it. Message and morals in the poem. The poem is a satire on the legal system in a humorous language. Justice should not be given without empathy and common sense. The sensory organs in this poem represent human behavior. There should be positive changes in our judicial system. My opinion about the poem. This is a beautiful poem on the situation of our judiciary system. I liked the personified sensory organs, which stand for human behavior. Justice should not be given blindly. यानंतर शेवटची पोएम आहे द प्लॅनर्स, रिटन बाय बोई किम चेंग. पहिला पॉइंट पहा, अबाउट द पोएम अँड पोएट. द प्लॅनर्स इज अ वेल नोन पोएम रिटन बाय बोई किम चेंग. He is a Singapore born Australian poet. of Chinese descent. In this poem, the poet describes fast developing modern Singapore. Theme: the poet has bonding with the old city Singapore. He was born there. He becomes nostalgic after observing the harsh realities of modernization and urbanization. The poet thinks that history and heritage of the country is neglected by the planners in Singapore. The city Singapore is turned into a concrete jungle by the city planners. The poet wants to preserve history and nature. Language style or poetic devices. The poem Planners is an example of free verse. The poet has used many devices such as repetition, alliteration, metaphor, personification, paradox, etc. The tone of the poem is satirical. The poet mocks the planners who are thoughtlessly destroying the past. Message and morals. The poet laments on the loss of history and heritage. The poet conveys the message of preserving nature and history. We must save natural surroundings in the age of modernization. My opinion. The poem tells us consequences of rapid urbanization. In my opinion, the poem shows us the harsh realities of the modern world. Dear children, टेक्स्टबुकमधील सर्व कवितांचे वाचन करा. त्यांचे अप्रिशिएशन लिहून लक्षात ठेवा. याच माहितीच्या आधारे तुम्ही कवितेवर आधारित 10 गुणांसाठी विचारलेल्या प्रश्नांची उत्तरेसुद्धा लिहू शकता. फॉर मोर व्हिडिओज ऑन पोएट्री सेक्शन, प्लीज विजिट माय यूट्यूब चॅनल. थँक्यू.